When I heard that our next speaker was going to be at this event, first of all, I was very pleasantly surprised, and I immediately requested the privilege of being allowed to introduce her, which they are allowing me to do, obviously. You know, a lot of us spend a lot of time in a bunch of different places in a bunch of different ways complaining about government injustice, and a number of us have been on the receiving end of government injustice in one way or another, to one degree or another. As many of you know, I had my own adventures with the U.S. federal extortion racket, which resulted in me being caged for a year and robbed into poverty. Yippee. But our next speaker got it a lot worse than I did. And I won't get into the details of what she went through, first of all, because she can tell you herself, and second of all, because if I start to talk about it, I'll either get choked up or start swearing and frothing at the mouth because of the injustice of it. For those of you who don't know about her, here's the formal, proper introduction. Our next presenter is a Christian author and speaker. She is also a retired certified public accountant, certified fraud examiner, and boy did she examine a large fraud, and a former IRS agent. Sherry has over 30 years in public, private, and governmental accounting. She was thrust into the national spotlight for taking a stand against government theft and landed in federal prison for 3 years because of it. These days, it feels like 100 years ago that she and I were allies in the same battle against the same federal extortion leviathan. But I believe that one of the reasons she got it so much worse than I did is because she was the ultimate heretic against the cult of government. She was someone who used to be one of them. She used to be part of the machine. So they have a particular grudge against her. And I believe she was just too intelligent and, more importantly, too moral for it to last forever, that she would be part of that. When someone has been a pawn of the machine, whether it's soldiers or cops or tax collectors, they have a vested psychological interest in not questioning things, in not making waves, in not looking at the evils done by the machine that they are a part of. And that is why I have such a deep and profound respect for anyone who has been in that position and yet still chose to seek out the truth and still found the truth and then dared to stand up and speak the truth. That takes a special kind of courage and integrity. And given the price that she has paid, speaking truth to power, as they say, and getting stomped on by that power, and stomped on harder than most of us will ever experience, and yet getting up and speaking the truth again, which she will be doing for us here today, earns her my utmost respect. It is my honor and my privilege to introduce to you my friend and supreme badass, Sherry Peel Jackson.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. All right, everybody. How's everybody this afternoon? Great. First thing I want you to do me a big favor and kind of squeeze in a little bit if you can. I know everybody likes their seats and stuff, but move to the middle a little bit for me. So I won't have to go all the way over there and all the way over there, because I want to talk to all of you. Okay, just like stay in the middle area if you're on the ends. That'll help me a lot. And I'll wait just a second while you do that. All right. Today we are going to talk about from evolution to revolution. And it's going to be my story, but it also is going to be your story. How about that? We're going to learn how to break the chains of financial bondage to the system. All right. Yeah, that's me when I was about maybe 5 or 6. We are evolving. Those of us who, what they call are woke, have realized that something's wrong. You know, we're not in Kansas anymore. We don't want to be in Kansas, and we need to figure out what we want to do for ourselves and our families. But the powers that be make it so hard for us to thrive instead of just surviving day by day. It's not impossible. And as you get together with groups like this and get with like-minded people and bond together, it's going to happen. Isn't I right? Yeah. So who is Sherry Peel Jackson? As Laura said, I'm a Christian author. I'm one of those that practices authentic Christianity. As a matter of fact, my relationship with Jesus is what caused me to take on this fight. If you know anything about Jesus, he was a great teacher, and he didn't berate anybody but the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Am I right? Guess who that is these days? Those critters in Washington. Those are the ones. He didn't bother other people. The critters in Washington are the ones that are the hypocrites. That's one thing I don't like, is a hypocrite. And the things that I've seen during this last several years with the president and all of this other stuff going on, it's a waste of time. I don't have TV, but I hear from a lot of people what's going on. It's like, this is a mess. It's just a mess. The Democrats and the Republicans are sleeping in the same bed, and they're screwing us all. So wake up, people. Wake up. Figure out what you're going to do for yourself and your family. Forget about what's on the television. I'm a mother and a Grammy. I have a 29-year-old son. I have a 27-year-old daughter, and she has a 5-year-old daughter. And Anna has Grammy wrapped around her finger. That's how I spend most of my free time. And it's so much fun playing with her, but when she wears me out, it's great that I can send her home. I am a truth seeker. God gave me the gift of numbers, and I've always learned about the truth about numbers, but my parents taught me to respectfully ask for the truth about everything, because you know what? If you don't know the truth, your reality is a fallacy, and you will be choking on the blue pill for the rest of your life, like a whole bunch of other people. You guys in here, thank goodness, have taken the red pill. I'm a world traveler. A lot of people don't know that about me. I like to travel. I don't spend money on CDs and clothes and go to malls and all that, but I save up money and I go on lavish trips. I like to travel across the world. Like, this is a great trip here. Go to Africa, go to Italy. So that's something that I like to do, and I found a lot of things when I travel. The United States is not the end-all and be-all. There are people all around the world that are thriving. There are people all around the world that want freedom also. So as opposed to us thinking, if we're in Canada, there's nobody like us. In the United States, there's nobody like us. Everybody wants the same thing. They want freedom. And this is what we're going after. I'm a financial teacher. I've always liked numbers, and I am the CEO of SP Jackson Consulting at this point. I don't have a license anymore. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but CEO means continually empowering others. And that's what I am here to do. My calling is to continually empower others. Doesn't matter what was done to me in the past. Truth is truth for everybody, or it's not truth at all. People ask me, well, you went to jail, so you changed your position? Why would I do that? Nothing else has changed. It's still a fraud. And I'm a survivor. My dad used to always brag that he raised me in such a way that if you dropped me out of a helicopter in the middle of Siberia on a banana peel, I would still survive. Little did he know that something like that was going to have to happen, but it did. So that's who I am. I grew up believing in the American dream. Y'all know what that is. It's like, get a good education, go to college, get a good job, which, by the way, jump out of bed, just over broke, those kinds of things. It's okay to have a job, but these things do not exist anymore. I don't know what your American dream is, but I'm sure it's not getting a good job, working there for 40 years and getting to go watch anymore, because it doesn't exist. I worked for CPA firms, and that got a little tired because they were sending me on trips all over the place. And it would have been different if they were sending me to LA or Vegas or New York, but I was in Jump Off, Georgia, and Kakalaki, Mississippi, just crazy places like that. I said, I can't do this. Staying in hotels that were kind of really musty with roaches on the walls. So I quit there, and I went to corporate America. How many of you know that corporate America is corrupt? Corrupt, almost as bad as the government. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know and what you do with who you know in corporate America. One of the things my parents always taught me, we couldn't complain in my house. My dad would say, do not complain. If you don't like where you are at point A, go to point B. So I didn't stay in corporate America long. I took a job at the Internal Revenue Service. Saw an ad in the paper, looked it up and said, I'm a pretty good math student. I got that job. I was hired on the spot, and I thought I was helping the country collect the right amount of tax. And that lasted for a while. I was actually there 7.5 years. But even before I found out that there was a problem, I started getting disgruntled there. I started seeing things. Let me tell you one of the things I saw. As I started moving up in rank, because I had a spirit of excellence. I always did my best at whatever, and I got promoted and all of that. I got a lot of awards. But I started seeing things as I started getting out of the smaller audits into the larger audits. So let me give you an example. Mom and pop business. People love their businesses. Sometimes they make mistakes. So I did an audit, and this couple owed about $25,000, and I felt bad. They really had a nice business going on, but, so I wrote an audit report for about 25 grand. A couple of months later, I had another audit. It was a larger company. They did something. I think they knew what they were doing, but they thought they were playing audit roulette, but they got caught. $320-something thousand. So I said, okay, well, you got to pay $20-something thousand, $320-something thousand. So larger companies, usually do appeals, and they appealed. The protocol for appeal is once they appeal, it comes back to my desk, and then I get to rebut. I get to say something against the appeal. So it came back to my desk as I figured it would. But when I opened it up, the case had been closed. The case was closed for $27,000. And I was like, I was supposed to get to the chance to write an appeal here. What happened? So I went to my manager and I said, what's going on here? He said, Sherry, leave it. So even the small person in this system gets jacked over these larger companies. And later on, I talked to some people that had some privy to what was going on, and the IRS lawyers and the lawyers that work for these larger companies, they get together and they make deals, just like the politicians make deals. And specifically, one lawyer told me this, and I'm no joke at all. He said there was a case, and IRS lawyers came in, and the company lawyers came in, and they were trying to settle the case and negotiate and all that. And so the IRS lawyer said, if you get me a date with the big titty secretary on the second floor, then we can close this case for a little bit of money. These things happen. It sounds funny, but it's crazy. These things happen, and the person that gets shafted is always the smaller company. How many of you heard the current Treasury Secretary or the Secretary of the IRS saying that they're not able to audit the larger companies now because they don't have the capacity they're going to audit the poor people because it's easier to audit the people that don't have the businesses. So here we are shafted again, and this has got to stop. And it's past complaining. I'm not complaining anymore. I'm doing something about it. So I stayed there for a while. I quit the job and started a CPA firm in my basement. That's when people started coming to talk to me about the income tax. Oh, we've been hearing that it's misrepresented and misapplied to the American people. And I had heard a little bit about it before, but people started coming to me a lot because I guess they were scared of me or scared to talk to me when I was an IRS agent, but they weren't scared. So I started hearing it more and more. And then in 2000, someone came to me and talked about an ad in the USA Today that said, "Dear we the people, the income tax is a fraud." And within the body of that ad, Joe Bannister, which is a former Criminal Investigation Division agent, had written a book and got released from his job because of the book. And also there was a $50,000 reward given by a guy named William Conklin to prove, if you could prove that the income tax was legal, that you had to file and you had to pay. So I said, okay, well, I've been hearing this. Let's go ahead and put this baby to bed. Let's do this research. I still had my codes and regulations. And, I had some time to research, and a week later, 3 weeks later, all this is going on. I'm thinking, why is it so hard to find this law? It should be so simple. I've got these codes and regulations here. What's going on? 2 months later, 3 months later, I'm like, oh no, we got a problem here. So I started going down that rabbit hole. How many of you been down a rabbit hole of one kind or another? I went down the rabbit hole. And then somebody gave me Ed Griffin's book. Oh my goodness, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a thick book, but I sat there, I read that book, and I was fuming. It was bad enough that the income tax was a fraud. The bad part is what's going on with the money. When I found out that the Federal Reserve wasn't federal, and then they're collecting millions of dollars an hour in interest from the American people, I sat there in my office, in my basement, thinking about the 16 hours a day sometimes that I would work just to make ends meet and have a decent life for my family. I'm a Trekkie, y'all. I had the old tapes that I would stick in of the original episodes of Star Trek to keep me awake so I could finish all these audit reports so we could go on vacation. And then I was mad. I was thinking to myself, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and all these other people that are owners of the Federal Reserve, their children's children will never have to work a day in their life. And I'm sitting here 16 hours a day trying to make my family be able to go to Mexico or somewhere, and I got that black woman snap. I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not. So I ordered Joe Bannister's book. Joe Bannister called me in the middle of the night one time. He lives in California. He's on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast, and he said, I just got your check, and I just realized that you're a former IRS. So we talked for a while, and we started getting together. And I started realizing more and more as I did research that this is a problem. And what came to my mind? I can't just keep this to myself. I got to talk about it. You know why? You all see this right here? Look at it. If stealing 100% of the product of someone's labor is slavery, at what percentage is it not slavery? I was done with that slavery stuff. Here's this, another mad black woman. I was done being a slave. I was done. So we started getting together, just like you all are getting together, coming up with some ideas. Got together with Joe Bannister and We the People Foundation and some other former IRS agents, and we started speaking. We started going to different events and speaking. We never told people what to do. We didn't tell people to file or not to file. We didn't tell people to pay or not to pay. What we told people is to do your own research, do your due diligence, and decide whether you want to be a slave or get off the plantation. That's all. And they were mad at me because you see I'm animated. And I was talking about it and I was mad, and so I was speaking a whole lot. They didn't like that. In 2004, one morning, early, it was a July morning, and Larkin had asked me to write something for him, a letter for him, and I was in my basement office with pajamas on. Actually, I'll just be honest with you, I had on a long t-shirt, and I was sitting there at my desk typing this letter, and it's not even 8 o'clock yet. And then all of a sudden, I hear this knocking at the door. Bam, 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 bam. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, that's my mother's knock. My mother's real loud. And she knocked. So what is she doing here this early in the morning? And so I started running up the stairs. And I'm panicking now because my mother's here and she's knocking. What's going on? And I get to the door, and I got lasers all over my face, the little red lasers. You know what I'm talking about? At the same time, I was married at the time. At the same time, I could see out of the corner of my eye that my husband was rushing down the stairs from upstairs because my family was asleep. So he's on the stairs right here. I'm on the stairs right here, and they're saying, federal agents, open up. And I'm thinking, okay, let me logic this thing out now. If I don't open up the door, these people have itchy trigger fingers, right? You see it all the time in the news. They just shoot. So I don't want to see my children. I don't want my children to come downstairs and see their mother laying in a pool of blood. So let me just go ahead and open up the door. I opened up the door. Now, there were 15 to 20 people that entered my home, were county police officers. Do you understand jurisdiction? County police officers. And then all the other ones were escorted in. They were all over my house within minutes. They went and woke up my children. There was a guy in the backyard with some kind of a metal detector trying to see if I had something buried in the backyard. I don't know what these people had been told about my family. But all we were was a homeschooling family trying to just live our lives. And they looked like, why are we here? Why are we here? And I was mad. And a lady officer finally said, do you want to put on some clothes? And as soon as she said that, I said yes. But I knew as I went up those stairs, I was going to find me some jeans and my 861 T-shirt. And I was ruffling through trying to find my T-shirt. This said that this income tax is a fraud, and I found it, and I stood up. They corralled us in my family room, didn't want us to go anywhere. They were wanting to ask us to use permission to go to the bathroom. I would not do that. When I get angry, I need water, so I got about 4 bottles of water and put them in the bay window, and I stood toe to toe. I didn't move. I was just like, you know you're wrong. You know you're wrong. And the little agent that was there, he started twitching, and then he went and let somebody else take that place. Anyway, so that was over. They were there from 7:45 to 5 o'clock, quitting time. And they took about 32 boxes, and they went away. And my lawyer friend said, well, if you shut up now, then they'll go away. Truth is truth. Why would I shut up? Kept going. 2006, Aaron Russo. How many of you seen American Freedom to Fascism? Right. He had us come out there, do the movie, former IRS agents, me, Joe Bannister, John Turner, some former FBI agents, constitutional attorneys, some historians, and he produced this movie. Now, I wish it had gone further in the movies, but they shut that down too. Hollywood didn't accept it. He raised some money to get it into a couple of theaters, 7 theaters. It stayed in the theaters for a week before it got shut down. It's out there now, and I still hear from people that are watching it. But the movie came out, and I think that made us more than just low-flying gnats on the radar screen of the government. Then they started to prosecute. They prosecuted Joe first. He was the darling of the tax movement. Joe Bannister won his case. That was the first time they had to deal with prosecuting an agent that did what they considered going rogue. And then the thing about Joe's case, he got a chance to have a lot of testimony, and they saw a video of Joe explaining what he thought about the law. Joe was acquitted. I was happy. I went out to his trial. It was 2 weeks. Then was Tommy Cryer. Tommy Cryer was a lawyer out of Shreveport, Louisiana, that hadn't filed tax returns in 10 years. And he showed them constitutionally what was going on. He said, we don't have income. How many of you know there's no definition of income in the Internal Revenue Code? Okay. Income is corporate profit. So let me give you an example. I had a great massage this morning. I had to loosen up, it was an hour and a half massage, and the lady, she was working me, and her bones were cracking, and my bones were cracking too. But in exchange for her time, her talent, which is her brain, she knew what she was doing, and her muscle, she got paid. That, people, is an even exchange. They are taxing your time, your talent, and your treasure. When Walmart, let's say, for example, let's make it small. If a Walmart in Atlanta, Georgia, makes $100,000 today, they can deduct the rent, the utilities, the employees, and all that, right? So let's say, for the sake of argument, after the deductions, the deductions are 80 grand. So there's 20 grand left, right? They get taxed on only the 20. Now, on how many levels is that wrong? Okay, so it doesn't really matter whether you believe that it's a law or not. Morally, you are taxing my life. My life force is being taxed. So I wasn't able to talk about that, though, because the judge kept talking about, I will inform the jury about the law. And I didn't get a chance to, by the time they got to me, it was like a football game, a football team that always wins. If they lose a game, you guys that watch football know the first thing they do Monday morning is they go and watch the film and figure out how they lost. Well, by the time they lost to Joe and they lost to Tommy Cryer, they weren't going to lose to me. They sent people down from Washington, D.C. to Atlanta to prosecute me. And the judge would not let me have a video up. She would not let me talk about the law. It was like a 3-ring circus. So you know what happened? I was found guilty of a misdemeanor called willful failure to file, because they finally had brought those charges in 2008. They couldn't find a felony after going through all those boxes. So what they did is say, okay, well, we have to bring an information, and the information is what you bring, the charges you bring if somebody's not a felon. This woman gave me a 4-year sentence on a misdemeanor charge. Definition of misdemeanor is 1 year in jail. And what they did was they stacked them because I was a six-figure earner, and that's another thing you need to know. Everybody's not going to get prosecuted. People with big mouths like me get prosecuted, but jury appeal is what they look for. They look for people like you to say, okay, well, will people like this, not you guys, the regular everyday blue pill people, will these people convict this person? Well, if I had a big mouth and I was only making $20,000, it probably wouldn't have happened. Maybe it would have, but since I was a six-figure earner and they kept saying, you know, in 2000, Miss Jackson made 100 and this and all of that, and it made them jury haters. So they immediately said, we're going to convict this lady. And here I am. First thing I did when I got home after the conviction was have my cousin write these 2-sentence letters and give back all my licenses, my CPA, AICPA, Georgia Society CPAs, all the licenses. Because when remember I told you Joe Bannister was acquitted? Yay. Internal Revenue Service got mad, went to the California Board of Accountancy and told them to take Joe's CPA license, and they did. This man was acquitted, yet you see how the corporatocracy works together, the government, the banksters, and the corporations, all of them work together. They took Joe's license, and I was not going to allow them to take my license. I gave it back. So that was what happened with the trial. I ended up in romper room hell. How many of you remember romper room? So romper room, for those of you who are younger, it's like the precursor to Sesame Street. This place was something that I never dreamed of. The women it was so crazy. You can't be her friend because you're my friend. Just really ridiculous stuff. They would cheat at board games. I learned not to play any games with them because they cheated, and it was really wild in there. So I learned to keep to myself. And I had a goal when I went in to come out there better, or at least as good as I was when I went in. The only thing that was different when I came out, I lost a tooth. If you want socialized medicine, go check out a prison, because it was crazy in there, and I had to lose a tooth because, you know, you can't wait 6 weeks when somebody has a toothache. Anyway, so I'm here in the prison. But one of the things that I had to do, I had to make lemonade out of lemons. This is what I did. I made sure that I made I said some things for my life that were going to happen and things that weren't going to happen. First of all, I never wanted to be broke, because being broke leads to a life of compromise. Most of the women in the prison were broke, and they did things because they were broke. Another thing, I never wanted to be subservient to anybody that I didn't want to be subservient to. You would not, how many of you could imagine having to listen to and obey every day Laurel and Hardy, the Three Stooges, those kind of people? You know, it was a humbling experience. It really was. But I said, this is not going to happen to me again. I've got to come up with some plans. So me and about 4 other ladies, on the weekends when the staff wasn't there, we would stay and we would sit down and we would make plans. And I made a lot of plans. If you notice something about this hawk, that was me. This bad boy has 2 fish. I was ready. I had 1 foot all the way pressed down on the gas, and the only thing that was on the brakes was them letting me out. I got out. I honed my skills. I wanted to make sure that the 3 years that I lost, I was going to make them up really quickly. I did that. Started my business as soon as I got off paper, for those of you all who know what that is. And started writing books. I actually have 4 prison books. I had to have that release. You know, you can't hold on to that anger. You got to take that energy, that anger energy, and you got to rechannel that energy into something positive. So what I did was I ticked them off too, because a couple of the books are just telltale books, but those are online somewhere on Kindle. But I wrote 4 prison books, and then I started writing the financial books. So my first financial book was How to Escape the Rat Race. I started from nothing, and I started from rock bottom, and then I started to dig, because some things happened when I got out of prison that were just really bad. But I said, this is not going to stop me. Then I wrote my flagship book, How to Stick It to the IRS. And people ask me, Sherry, how do you have the balls to write a book called How to Stick It to the IRS? They stuck it to me. I'm sticking it back to them. And so this book, I got my tax attorney to write a chapter in the book, and, you know, people are buying the book, and it's basically, how do you deal with these people? if they audit you? How do you deal with these people? People are too scared of the IRS, and I think that God had me in the IRS so that I wouldn't be scared, partially because I'm from Detroit, I can take them on, people from Detroit. But this book basically is I'm getting back at you because I'm going to help the American people figure out how not to be fearful. And then the book that I wrote last year, Church Wealth Ministry Health, basically a lot of people in churches, a lot of ministers, a lot of them, and the IRS cannot audit a church, but they go in the back door and audit the minister. And then if they find egregious stuff, then they audit the church. And some of you may have different feelings about church, but there are a whole lot of people in the church that need to know about this, right? There are a whole lot of people in church that need to know about freedom. So I wrote that book. Also, I started getting around and writing articles. Now, half these people might not have known I've been to prison, but I write articles that let people know how to save their money. Instead of cutting the head off the beast, like Larkin and I did, taking the sword and swinging at the beast and trying to cut his head off, I now help people starve the beast to death. Just starve him to death. Starve him to death by keeping the money that you earn, protecting it, and making it grow. So I've been blessed. My father calls me the comeback kid because I've gotten a chance to get around and talk to people. And, some people know who I am. Some of the people that I've met that you wouldn't know, they know who I am. As a matter of fact, when I was in prison, one of the A-list actors in Hollywood sent $10,000 to help pay for the mortgage. But these people want freedom also. They care. I've heard from so many people that say, hey, I know what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing. And they support me. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about us. The future is now. I'm not looking at the past. People ask me, why don't you sue them? I'm not suing them because I'm moving forward. What kind of life are you creating for yourself and your family? Ask yourself that. What kind of future are you creating for your family? Will you be here? How many of you know most Americans are 2 pay cycles away from the street? Or will you be here? How many of you want to be free to move around wherever you want to, whenever you want to? That's right. Within the next 3 to 5 years, this is where I'm taking people. There's a way to get there without having to risk jail. I want nobody to go through what I had to go through. Because a person that is prepared is going to prosper no matter which direction the economy goes, whenever it goes. How many of you know it's going? How many of you think it's already gone? It's already gone. They're just trying. You know what? You only got 10 fingers to plug in a dike. If the dam is broken, you only got 10 fingers, and we're on number 9. But why aren't we prepared? We aren't prepared because we're caught in this thing called the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism. The cultural hypnotic societal mechanism wants you broke. They want you sick. They want you sick. How many of you know about, you all, I'm preaching to choir. The pharmaceuticals, the Frankenstein foods and all of that. People, I've talked to people and say, you can't eat that. You're not supposed to eat that. Well, I can't afford to eat this and I can't afford to eat that. So they have people thinking that they can't eat healthy. So everybody's sick. Everybody's got the diabetes and the high blood pressure and all of that. How many of you know that the biggest uptake in diabetes is in the teens? Juvenile diabetes. These kids are killing themselves. I mean, there are kids that have diabetes and they're teenagers. This is a plan. They want you broke. Why is it that they're still, at least in Georgia and other states that I've heard about, they're still not teaching the teenagers in high school how to balance a checkbook and how to manage money? That's all by design. They don't want you to know how to manage money. They want you to get the credit card, and they want you to spend all your money at needless markup, and then you'll be broke. They want you misinformed. Now, like I said, I don't have TV. I have a television, but we have Netflix and some little things for my granddaughter, educational shows for her, but I don't have all those CNN and CNBC or the local stations because it's a crock. All of them have the same stuff on at the same time, telling you the same crap. Turn it off. By the way, for those of you that don't know, my name for the television is the electronic income reducer and the electronic intellect reducer, because that's what it's doing. It's making you sit there and making you a zombie while somebody else is getting rich. So we're misinformed, and we're fearful. How many times do they talk about the threat level and this person was planning an attack and all this, and they keep people fearful? Because a fearful people is a subservient people. They'll let you do anything. Oh, we need to be protected. Well, I can protect myself with my puppies. One is 15 rounds a clip, and one is 9 rounds a clip. Okay? Do not be fearful. And I'm 86% proficient in the kill zone at the range, so don't step to my house. Okay? But we got to stop being fearful. We have to stop being fearful. Now, that was when I had my revolution. That's when it started. We all need a revolution. We shouldn't have to see this. You know, it hurts me. And you know, this guy, I took the picture. I pulled this picture because he looks like a veteran. First of all, they went over there thinking that they were fighting for their country, as opposed to Standard Oil's right to drill in the Bay of Tonkin. And half of them, when they came back and found all that stuff out, that's why you got all of these issues. One of my friends said when he found out about that, he was in the bed for 3 days in tears. But we gotta stop this. We gotta help each other. We gotta help have a revolution here. And we can't do it while we're sitting there complaining. Stop complaining. Do you all know that during the Vietnam War, somebody asked Alexander Haig, hey, you know, what do you think about all these protesters of the Vietnam War? He said, let them complain as long as they pay their taxes. Look it up. Let them complain. Let them protest as long as they pay their taxes. Think about it. One of the things that my father taught me is about mindset. That's why I'm kind of like real Spockish, you know. When I would do something crazy, he would say, what was your mindset when you did that? Tell me about your mindset. The mindset of the poor. Poor people buy liabilities. This is what we got to stop doing. So if you're not poor, or if you're not in this mindset, help your brothers and sisters and your neighbors and your aunts and your uncles. The mindset of the poor, they buy liabilities and their lives are focused on survival. So their mindset is, I can't change my circumstances. I need to make the best of what I have. What does poor mean? Passing over opportunities repeatedly. Passing over opportunities repeatedly. This is what they do. Why do they pass them over? Because they don't see them. Why don't they see them? Because they're watching TV, or they're doing this with the video games. Middle class people, let's talk about them. Middle class people buy liabilities often thinking that they're assets. That's what they do. You know, and they try to move up, but they can't move up. They're caught in this thing where when their income goes up, they're in this curse where within 6 months, their expenses went up to meet their income. This is what happens with most of the people that I know, and the people that I work with want to get out of this. And they teach their children how to earn a living because they think a living must be earned. They say, I must listen to what authorities tell me, or consensus reality tells me I can and cannot do. Don't tell me what I can and cannot do. Think. Ask questions for yourself. I used to be one of those authorities. I was a CPA. I was a former IRS agent. I was an IRS agent. How was I taught? I was taught in the box. All I knew is what I was taught. So if you came to me from the left or the right, I couldn't help you. Even the lawyers today, when I talk about some of the strategies that I use, some of my clients will go back and ask lawyers, and they'll have this knee-jerk reaction. Oh, that's that. I don't believe that. Haven't done a lick of research. But because they haven't heard of it, it's not right. Question everything. This is where we need to be. As opposed to being sick, broke, misinformed, and fearful, we need to have that mindset change, a mind makeover. We need to be healthy, wealthy, informed, and courageous. And you guys are already courageous, so give yourself a hand. Now, I'm going to go through this. These are things that we weren't taught in the government school system, and it is a government school system. The government school system is there to make obedient servants to the corporatocracy. Okay? If you can help it, get your children and your grandchildren out. If you can't, make sure that in the evening they're doing something besides looking at the idiot box. Okay? We're not taught to keep the money we earn. We're not taught how to control spending and taxes. We are not taught about interest. Interest is a killer. I hate interest unless I'm earning it. We're not taught about interest. We're not taught a delayed gratification. That's something that my dad grilled into my head. There's a video out there on YouTube that I think it says former IRS agent learns, it says dead broke IRS agent, and that's how it starts out. But I talk about the fact that my dad taught me delayed gratification. And I know how to wait to get what I want. But most of the people have bought into this system, buy now, pay later stuff. And don't take financial advice from financially illiterate people. Why are people still listening to the gurus on television? And you're not rich at all, because they're on television because they're with the system, and they want to make sure that you don't know how to get out of the system. Somebody like me, they will not put on television. I know people that have been on television one time, and as soon as they said something that was against the flow of the government, they were never invited back. We're not taught to protect the money that we earn. Eliminating taxes. And I don't know if you all know about the legal system being the new lottery right now, but think about that. It started out with a lady who tried to sue McDonald's because she spilled some hot coffee on her. And we're not taught how to grow the money we earn. Have the money work for you so that you don't have to work for money. Getting out of debt. I hear a lot of people talk about their debt, and it is okay to have business debt. That's how your president and all these other people work. They leverage business debt. But the people I talk about, they went to the mall and they went and bought a new Mercedes-Benz and all these other things. Here's some things that I'm going to go through really quickly. Simple stuff that I do. Don't go to the grocery store hungry. How many of you do that? You mean to spend $20, but you come out with $50. Oh, I need to get this, I need to get that. I don't go. I'll get some fruit or something, some trail mix or something before I go. Just grab it up and eat it, and it makes a difference. Don't go berserk at Christmas. I don't buy Christmas gifts. Some people do. Some people buy their nieces and nephews that they haven't seen all year, $50 each gifts, and then they're broke. When the bills come in January, then they're complaining. You know, make gifts. They used to call us the broke Jacksons. But then once I started getting things together, who was coming to borrow rent and mortgage from me? You see what I mean? Buy a good used car instead of a new car. That will save 5 years off your retirement if you plan to retire. So you buy a good used car for cash and you run it until it runs in the ground. And then all the money that you would have been paying on a car note, if you invest that, you're going to be in really good shape. See, a lot of people in my environment, they like to wear their income on their back and they like to drive it. And they like to keep up with the Joneses. I don't know who the Joneses are, but the Joneses are broke too. And they're just perpetrating the prima donna. And that's not what you want to do. Buy clothes at thrift stores. Now, that's a real big one. When I was, and I still do it, but when I was coming out from prison and there were some things that I was going to do and I was not going to spend money at needless markup and Macy's and all that, so I would buy stuff at the thrift store. I would put on a cat suit. Y'all know what a cat suit is? A full body suit, and go in there and try the clothes on because the best one didn't have dressing rooms. And what I would do is try on all the clothes, and the ones that fit, I would buy them, and the ones that didn't fit, I would put them back. And I got a lot of attention. The women were saying, "Oh, girl, you're so smart," and the guys were going, "Oh, But thrift store clothes are something that I recommended to some people that were in debt and asking me to borrow some money, and they said, "Those clothes stink," and I said, "Wash them, take them to the cleaners." But the societal mechanism has gotten us so locked into all these commercials and stuff that people see on TV that you got to have this and you got to have Nike and all that other stuff like that. Eliminate non-essential expenses like cable TV. Read. Oh, I just heard Rick Ross say that he read 300 books, and I was back there clapping because that's what's going to, you know what? You know a person by the library in their house. Walk into somebody's house and look at their library, you know where they are. Cut your own hair. I didn't realize, y'all, that hair costs so much, and I don't know. Let me take a little sidebar quick. I like this place, but one thing I have to do every morning is dodge the shower because it's this big old thing at the top, and black people don't wash their hair every day, and you can't get your hair wet like that because if it gets wet, there's no telling what I'll be looking like. I could be looking like James Brown, so I have to pull back, and I have to turn it on. It's going to come on. You can't avoid it. And then you have to hurry up and pull the thing so it'll come out of the other thing. It's like, oh. But doing your own hair saves a lot of money. And I use that because a lot of people spend a lot of money on grooming. Keep your thermostat at 68. People that live in the north, that might be a little hard when it's cold. But keeping your thermostat down saves a lot of money every year. Now, what about in the summer? What if you live in Georgia like me and it's hot? You know what? When you're in a situation where your finances aren't good, you have to do what you have to do. I built a portable air conditioner. That's my portable air conditioner. I actually have 2 of them. And the hardest thing about it is getting the 18 bottles of water out of the freezer to put in there and set it up, and then when they unthaw, put them back in there. Because I have little rolls, and I have a little, it's green, a little green towel to say, you already used that one, go to the next one. And I sit there, and that thing will blow out nice air because it's just me in a 4-bedroom house. And so I'm not going to turn on the air conditioning I just put that next to me, and for 3 hours, I stay very, very cool. Isn't that neat? I don't like wasting money. Protecting the money that you earn. We live in an ineptocracy, a system of government where the least capable to lead are elected by the least capable of producing, and where the members of society least likely to sustain themselves or succeed are rewarded with the goods and services paid for by the confiscated wealth of a diminishing number of producers. I am one of those producers, and I am sick and tired of folks taking what I earn. That's theft. Regardless of what you might call it, is theft. I'm tired of people taking, it's not their right. Larkin talked about that. You can't just make a law and come in and say, okay, Sherry, you worked hard, you earned that, but we gotta give it over here because Joe is sitting on his behind and he's not working, or Sally or Sue or Bunshika. You know, I'm tired of that, and we gotta do something about that. You realize that we live in an ineptocracy. Did you realize that we also, those of you that live in the U.S., live in the United States of America? We have 5% of the world's population and 70% of the world's lawyers. There are more lawyers in Atlanta, Georgia than the whole of Japan. Okay, so you have a very great chance of being sued because it's the new lottery. You got to learn how to protect your assets. You got to protect your assets from the insidious representatives of Satan called the IRS. So the insidious representatives of Satan, you get paid with your W-2 and they take taxes off the top. They want the money that you have earned off the top. And then whatever's left, you pay your mortgage and you go to the mall and you party and then you're broke. That's the earn spend cycle. Every Friday, and I don't pass the mall every Friday, but the mall is kind of near where I pass by, and it's just full of people. And I know people with at least a third of the clothes in their closet with tags on them. It's a mindset change that we need to teach. I'm teaching it, but you guys need to teach them also. Make them feel bad, embarrass them, step on their toes, but they got to learn it. When you have a business, you earn that same $1,000, but you get to take your business expenses first. And then if there's anything left, then there's taxes. Protecting yourself from the IRS. Listen, you've just gotten an audit letter. There are different kinds of audits. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. You got to understand them so you won't be afraid of them. There's a correspondence audit. That's when they send you a letter in the mail and say, you know, you wrote off travel expenses. Send me all the documentation in the mail. So you send them the documentation in the mail that you had travel expenses or move-in expenses, and it's over. Then you have your office audits. That's when you have to go into one of those offices with somebody sitting at a desk all day. Y'all know about government employees, right? And then they want you to bring these records in to these people. And then if you file a tax return, you bring the records in to the people. And then, you know, regardless of whether or not they think that your records are sufficient, you can always go forward with that. That's another thing. People are so afraid of the IRS that they'll just take everything that they say. But you all are fighters, and I'm praying that you teach everybody else to be fighters. Then you have the field audits. That's what I was. I was a revenue agent. I worked out in the field. I went to spy on people. I went to their houses, and there's this thing called an initial interview, and it lasts 45 minutes to an hour. And they ask a lot of questions. And depending on how you answer those questions, you can bury yourself. You can bury yourself. Because people talk about their businesses, loose lips sink ships. So be careful if you're dealing with these people. Market Segment Specialization Project. The MSSP was a project that they started some time ago. And it deals basically with cash businesses. So those of you that have a cash business, there are programs that are set up for certain cash businesses. 2 examples. Laundromat. they have a program that, okay, let's go back. The premise is that you deducted all your expenses, but you didn't put all your income on there. So they have a program for the laundromats where they calculate based on your water bill how much they think you made. And to me, that's pulling numbers out of the air. So I would always dispute that. Another one is beautician. How many beauticians do we have in? People that do hair for money. Ma'am, they will calculate based on your receipts for shampoo and how many ounces, how many heads you did, and you've already told them in the initial interview how much you charge per head, and they'll make that calculation. And people acquiesce to this stuff because they're scared, and I know a lot of beauticians probably do take all the cash on Fridays to take their families out to dinner, but it's not fair, and so you guys need to know this. And criminal investigations, that's after a revenue agent would go out and find something that might be criminal, then they would turn it over to what Joe Bannister used to be like a criminal investigation. So the correspondence ones, it's easy, send your information in. The office audit, sometimes the people are nice, sometimes the people have attitudes. If you ever have an audit, do not schedule it on a Monday because they are grumpy. Do not schedule it on a Friday because they're not paying attention. Field audit, be careful, be very careful, and you may want to get a representative. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And the MSSP, we talked about the laundromats. Be careful if you have any kind of cash business. Another one was the cleaners also. Then the criminal investigation, that's when they think you've done something criminal and they do a lot of background stuff. As a matter of fact, my children used to be in Christian school, and when the IRS came to start investigating, they went to talk to the school because I used to pay for the tuition up front. And I don't know what they said to the people, but we had been there 5 years. Guys, we weren't invited back. When school was over, we immediately got a letter that my children weren't invited back. So this is what they do to people. They instill a lot of fear. Here's some red flags if you do file tax returns, red flags that will cause you to get audited. Round numbers. They think you're guessing when you have round numbers. Having a home-based business will get you audited, and this is why. When they train new revenue agents, they don't want them cutting their teeth on people that just have a W-2, because usually when you just have a W-2, you have the taxes taken out already, and usually you're getting a refund back. So they go after the small mom and pop businesses so that the revenue agents can learn how to do an audit. But this should not scare you out of having a home-based business, because if your business has legitimate expenses, then there's nothing to worry about. Another one is consistent business losses. They like to try to say you can't have, and I talked to somebody about this earlier, they like to say you can't have over 3 years of business loss. So why is it that all these large corporations get losses every year? And you can do that also. If you have a loss, you have a loss, regardless of whether it's 3, 5, or 7 years, you have a business loss. But that will get you audited sometime. Jealous neighbors. Do you guys know they got a 800 line for you to tell on people? Your neighbor, if your neighbor is mad at you for some reason or another, if you're letting your dog crap in their front yard or something like that, they can call the IRS and turn you in. And guess what? If they find that you have done something wrong in your tax return, do you know your neighbor can get a 30% reward? 30% of what was collected. So it gives people incentive to turn people in, and it's crazy. People turn people in. Unscrupulous taxpayers. Would you get your tax return done at Mo Money Taxes? I wouldn't, but what they do is they find people that do tax returns and they see the similarities, and then they'll come and raid Mo Money and they'll get all the tax returns and audit everybody, because that's what they like to do. Omitting 1099 income. If you're going to file and if you got 1099s, and even if you didn't, they want you to put it on there. But if some are left off, that's one of the major ways, because now they have this matching system. And high mileage deductions, that's what they call one of the areas of abuse. When you have a lot of mileage, you have to document that, because a lot of people do drive around a lot. But the bottom line is, as long as you have everything documented, you're going to be okay. And high travel and entertainment. How many of you know that this trip to Anarchapulco is a tax deduction if you have a business? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. So how many of you, as of today, are going to have a home-based business so you can write this trip off? And your cell phones and all these other things. Offshore banking. If you have any kind of offshore connections, a lot of times they they get suspicious because you're not supposed to know this stuff. You're not supposed to know how to operate offshore. So that could trigger an audit. In high-profile professions, doctors, lawyers, preachers, those kind of people, they like to audit them because a lot of times the agent gets cash rewards. I used to get cash rewards. They get cash rewards for auditing, and especially if it makes the newspaper. Isn't that a shame? So you have been contacted for an audit. What do? You get the tax return in question. The fastest audit that I ever did, I went out, and I was supposed to be out there for 5 days because it was a specialized audit, and I was supposed to audit every number on the tax return. I was out there for 3 or 4 hours, and I thought I was going to be out there for 5 days. Because what those people did was they pulled the tax return, and it was a business tax return. And for every line on the tax return, they had a folder for me with all the expenses already in the folder. Not only did they put the original receipts in the folder, they had already copied those receipts for me to take with me. Those people wanted me out of their business. They didn't want me there. And I don't blame them, but I told them, this is great. I'm telling everybody in the world, if you get an audit and you have a business, make sure that every line on the tax return has a separate folder with the expenses in it, and you can get over the audit really quickly. In order to prepare, you got to organize all that stuff. You will tick an agent off if you give them, like I have been given, grocery bags full of receipts with roaches, dead roaches in the bottom of the bag. Yes, I have been given that. Yes, I have. Place all the requested in separate folders. Place the bank statements in a separate folder. They're always going to look at the bank statements separately because they want to see that the amount of money that you put on the tax return is also, there's not more money in your bank account as deposits. And there could be, but you have an explanation for that. You could have gotten an inheritance of $100,000. That's not taxable. Request copies of invoices that are missing. A lot of people that have audits, they don't know. You can go back to the company and request the audits. So if you had a business in 2000, let's say 2018, they might be auditing that right now, or 17. You can go back to American Express and ask them to send you that, or Verizon, or any of the companies, even the electric company, and get those records, just because you don't have them now. Reconstructing mileage. You have the right to reconstruct mileage. There's something called the Cohen rule, and this is guy, his last name was Cohen, and he was an actor, and he was based in New York, but he would do Broadway all over the place, and he didn't keep up with his receipts well. Well, they took him to tax court, and the bottom line is, if you had income, logic dictates that you had expenses. So he was able to reconstruct his expenses. So thank goodness for Cohen. Make copies of all the receipts, place them in the separate folders. Never, ever give them the originals. Never give them records that they did not ask for. Never give them any. If they didn't ask for it, don't give it to them. One time I had an audit, and I went to a CPA firm that was representing the client, and they gave me everything. What did I do? I looked at it. You know, don't let your accountant or anybody give them that stuff. Review what your representative is giving them. Get a letter together and make sure that they have a deadline. These people are lazy. They will let your case sit in their desk for months if they don't want to do it. And that's just causing you to have more stress and maybe even more interest. Request a follow-up date in your letter. Mail the package, FedEx or UPS. Stuff gets lost in the mail, and follow up with them. Hiring a representative. I wouldn't go before them without a representative, but you got to get a good one that knows what they're doing. A lot of my clients have been getting representatives that don't know what they're doing, and they're kowtowing to the IRS, coming back and saying, well, all I could do is get them to do this. It's like, no, you have legitimate. I had a client that the IRS said she owed $19,000. The CPA went in there and said, well, you owe the $19,000. I did it behind the scenes and got her down to 10 because she had legitimate expenses. Even, you have to know, a lot of CPAs are afraid to tangle with the IRS also. So be careful about who you get to represent you. If you have unreported income and you did file a tax return, definitely bring that forth so that they won't put you under criminal investigation, because they like to do stuff like that. If you agree with the findings, go ahead and get it over with. If it's like I have clients that people put stuff on their tax return and they didn't know and it's not legitimate, let's not fight about that. There's full payment. There's payment plans. I don't like payment plans because that puts you in shackles, and then the interest accumulates on top of interest, on top of penalties, on top of interest. Or you can do an offer in compromise, which means that you offer them something less because you can't afford to pay them and you won't be able to afford to pay them. But if you disagree, you fight like that. Fight with these people. Don't let them do that to you. So we talked about keeping what you earn, protecting what you earn, growing what you earn. I talked a lot about growing what you earn when I was in the TDV. But basically, when you have a home-based business, you can write off everything but the kitchen sink. Your cell phone is deductible now. It's not deductible when you don't have a home-based business. Your internet, all these things are deductible. And if you're going to be in the system, you might as well be able to have a business like the wealthy people do and the business people do. So the decision is yours. Life is about choices. My Jamaican friend says the best way to the top is to get off your bottom. And that's what we got to do. We got to get off our bottoms. We got to think. You got to use strategy and figure out what's best for yourself and your family, because what will happen, do you want to be here? And this is actually the street my children live on, or my son lives on now. That's somebody getting foreclosed on. Or will you be here with me and my children in St. Martin? You know, this is what we want to do. So this is what we have to do. If anybody wants more information, you want to work with me, I help people start businesses. I help people with IRS issues. I have a little booth out there, way out there on the little Fiesta. And that's where I'll be for the rest of the time I'm here. I'll be here till Monday morning. And I thank you for your time.